When I graduated from college, I started on a career path that was great for earning a stable income, but not so great for having the freedom to live where I wanted to live and to spend my time how I wanted to spend it. I remember one day sitting in my cubicle on the 10th floor of an office building, looking out over a vast city and thinking to myself, I just want to be in Idaho where my family is and where I can love the outdoors and the farmland and just the wonderful smells and experience of where I grew up. That's what I wanted, that's what I longed for, but it's not what I had. Now I do have the freedom to live where I want and to spend my time in the ways that I want to spend it. But I can understand that you may have a dozen reasons why to not start building your passive income website today. Now today, I'm just going to eliminate one of those roadblocks for you by answering a question: how much does it actually cost to start and run a passive income website? And it's probably a lot less than you think. We've been asked lots of times, how much does it actually cost to start and run a passive income website? And again, it's probably a lot less than you think. There are really only a handful of things you need to be paying for in the first year of your website. And the first one of those things is hosting. One of the biggest mistakes you could make is to use a free hosting provider for your website. Building on a free platform may work for a personal blog that you just want to share with family and friends, but if you're trying to build a more professional actual business, you're going to need something just a little bit better. Even the shared hosting platforms like Bluehost, SiteGround, HostGator, all of those other companies, they're going to work just fine in the early days of your website. And the cost to start your website on one of those is actually pretty minimal. We're looking at maybe $3 to $5 a month for your first website. Now just make sure you're prepared to pay for the whole year up front, $30 to $50. But that's a whole year's worth of hosting for your website, and it's going to be a huge step above using a free platform. The other mistake you can make with relation to hosting is believing that you need a more premium hosting solution from the very start. Some people will tell you that it's very amateur to build your website on an inexpensive shared hosting platform. Well, I'm sorry, but it just does not make sense to spend $200 or even $2,000 a year for expensive premium hosting on a brand new website that is not yet earning any income or driving any traffic. So use an inexpensive shared hosting platform to get started. The ones I cited are just fine. Keep your costs down. The other thing you're going to need to spend money on is a domain name. Now, a lot of the shared hosting providers out there are going to offer you a free domain name for a year. We actually recommend that you keep your domain registration separate from your hosting. Now, using that free year is okay, especially if you're on a tight budget. But by keeping them separate, you just protect yourself. By not having all your eggs in one basket, there's nobody that can hold your entire website over your head if you decided you wanted to change providers in the future. Migrating a website is very easy, but if that host also registers your domain for you, sometimes they'll register them in their name and on your behalf. And by doing that, they can make it very hard for you to actually transfer that domain to somewhere else. So just stay safe. Keep your hosting and your registration separate. One more tip with relation to domain names. I don't want you to skip on domain privacy unless you are on a really tight budget. This is an added service that most domain registrars offer, and it's only going to cost you probably between about $7 and $15 per year, depending on who you're using for your domain registration. This is going to prevent you from receiving tons and tons of spam emails and phone calls from companies wanting to offer you services. And the reason that they're calling and emailing you is that your contact information is provided to the Whois registry. And through that, anybody can find out who owns a website and how to contact them. Domain privacy is where the domain registrar provides their contact information on your behalf. You own the domain registration, but the Whois registry sees their contact information, and you keep your personal information private. The third thing you might need to spend some money on at this point in your website is a good WordPress theme. Now, there are lots of free themes out there, so don't get me wrong. You can actually skip this cost altogether as well. But what we find is, for the most part, the premium themes are much better. Now, not all premium themes are great, and not all free themes are bad. It doesn't work that way. You're going to want to shop around. You're going to want to read some reviews. Find a theme that looks how you want it to look. And one big pro tip with relation to themes, look at how they treat images. If a theme takes your featured image and then blows it up and puts it in the post, what you may end up with is a small file size for your featured image that when blown up looks very grainy. So what people end up doing is leaving their images, their featured images, as large file sizes. Well, the downside of that is now your homepage loads very slow, because even though the images are very small, the file sizes are huge, and the homepage could take several seconds to load. Now, there are some ways around that. There are a couple of really good plugins that do a really good job of compressing images automatically for you, so you can upload them at full size, and then they'll be optimized for where they're being used on the website. Those would be plugins like Imagify and ShortPixel. We've used both, and they both just do a great job. But looking at how the theme treats images is one really good way to determine whether or not a theme is pretty good or pretty bad. Now, some premium themes are great and they're really user-friendly, but they have so many features that they get kind of bloated from a coding standpoint. And so some of those really big, nice, and really popular themes often end up also slowing down your website a little bit. Again, read some good reviews. You're going to find all that kind of information online. The next thing you may want to spend money on is a logo. What a logo does is it makes your website look a little bit more professional, and it helps with branding. Now, branding isn't a big deal when you're building a new niche website, but if you want to turn this into a more authoritative website down the road, having a good brand behind it is absolutely worth it. But the professionalism aspect of it makes it worth it even on a niche website, because it just makes your website look a little bit more legitimate, which is going to build a little bit more trust and a little bit more authority with people. Now, how much is a logo going to cost? Well, for a good logo, you're going to spend about $100. In fact, some of the services we like to use cost about $130 to get a really decent logo, something that looks very professional and that's custom tailored to you and your wants. Now, if you don't have that kind of money today to do a logo, you have a couple options. You can either skip the logo for now and just have the name of your website show up in that logo space, or you can use an inexpensive solution like a clip art logo. If you just Google clip art logos, you'll find that there are several services out there that will sell you a clip art for $5 to $10 usually, that is royalty free and that you're allowed to tweak and modify to turn into a logo. Now, that can be a great solution. It's not going to be as perfect, it's not going to be as custom, it's not going to look quite as professional, but it's something that works in the short term and something that you could build off of down the road once your website's making money. So again, a logo at this point in your website is going to cost you anywhere from $0 to maybe $130 if you decide to go that route. The fifth and last thing that you may want to spend money on at this point on your website is images. Having good images could take a very, very boring and dull looking website and turn it into something that's very user friendly and that's very helpful. If you have a post that's like how to do something and you have photos of each step along the way, that's going to be so much more helpful than just trying to explain it in words. Remember, a picture's worth 1,000 words, oftentimes many more than that. So where do you get good photos? Well, you have a couple of different options. One is to buy stock photos. Now, this can get very expensive and very pricey. Let me just talk about that for a second, and then we'll come back to the other way to get photos. You can get stock photos through a subscription plan that's going to cost you maybe $150 a year, where you can download as many photos as you want, but the selection of photos on those plans tends to be a bit more limited. And if you're not writing a lot of articles or building multiple websites, it may be tough to get $150 worth of photos within a year's time. Now, we have lots of websites, we write lots of content, and so for us, it's absolutely worth it. The other option is to use one or multiple of the other providers out there, where you buy credits and then you use credits to buy individual photos. By getting on one of their plans that allows you so many credits per month, or buying a bundle of credits, you can often bring the cost of each photo down a little ways, but you are probably still looking to spend anywhere from $5 to upwards of $10 per photo if you use those services. It can get very pricey very quickly, and the problem with stock photos is they don't look as genuine, they don't look as authentic, and they're oftentimes not direct matches for your content. And because of that, they're less helpful than they're probably worth. So what's the better solution? Well, option number 2 for getting photos is by far better if you can make it work. And that is to take your own photos. Now, we're not suggesting you need to go become a professional photographer and buy very expensive camera equipment. If that were the case, you might as well just go buy a bunch of stock photos. What we do recommend is that you get out your cell phone, which probably has a pretty good camera on it, and we recommend that you take your own photos. Again, if it's a how-to type article, just do the thing you're teaching people how to do and take photos of each step along the way. That's going to be super valuable. Now, if you're in a niche where it's going to be tough for you to get a lot of photos because you're not super active in that niche all the time, and so when you're writing an article, it's tough to get out and go get a photo of that thing right now. Really, that wouldn't be a good use of time anyway. It's far better to take a lot of photos in a short period of time and just store them for another day. Let's say your niche is rock climbing, but you don't actually do much rock climbing. So how are you going to get photos taken yourself? How about you go spend one day at a rock climbing gym? While you're at the gym, pull out your cell phone and take photos of everything. Get 10 photos of carabiners from different angles or different uses, maybe the rope tied to a carabiner. Take pictures of the knots, take pictures of the handholds, take pictures of the big rock wall, of people climbing, of yourself climbing. Just get a ton of photos. And remember, you may talk about carabiners in 10 different articles on your website. You're not going to want to use the same photo on all 10 articles. So get multiple angles and multiple views so that you can switch it up a little bit. One more pro tip when it comes to photos. While you're at the rock climbing gym, if that were your niche, go take a bunch of photos of yourself in various poses, potentially pointing at something, have your hand out, maybe point, maybe do one of these. What you can do with that is you can make a whole bunch of thumbnail images or featured images for posts and YouTube videos where you enter text in the area where you're pointing. What that allows you to do is use maybe 10 different photos and use those for 50 different featured images, and they'll all look a little bit different. That can be a great way to get a lot of images, especially for those featured images or those thumbnails on your website or on your YouTube channel, and you can do it within a very short period of time. Now, this exact same approach works for many other niches. If you're talking about fish, go to an aquarium one day. If you're talking about fishing, get out on a boat for one day and take as many photos as you can. Use that experience to your benefit, and you'll end up with far better photos for your website and far more photos for the cost than you could get if you were to go try to find those types of photos in a stock image library. And that is it. Those are the only things you really need to pay for your website for the whole first year. Hosting, a domain name, maybe a theme, maybe a logo, and maybe images. I mean, we're talking about for about $100 to maybe a little over $200 for the whole first year. You can start a business that will be able to passively generate a full-time income for you within a couple of years. I don't know of any other business opportunity with that kind of return on investment. Now, if you're building your website this way on a budget, you're not going to end up with the fastest loading website on the internet. Things like your hosting and your images are big factors that affect how fast the pages on your website are going to load for users. Now, as long as you're not in about the bottom 20% of slowest websites on the internet, it's not going to hurt you from an SEO standpoint. But if a user comes to your site and the page they're loading loads really, really slow, they're more likely to bounce. So what do you do about it? Well, we made a video all about that. Go check out that video and learn how you can speed up your website for free in about 30 minutes.